Hey, I'm Marie, co-founder of Doki. We help people deliver online courses, training, mentorship programs, and I'm going behind the scenes with other people who make a living from their digital products. And I'm here with Tara Gentile. Tara, you're one of the first people that I thought of when I wanted to reach out to other course creators of sorts, because I think that you've done a tremendous amount to evolve way beyond just online courses. And I know that you've got lots of opinions about online courses and really just how you've evolved into really community-led products and programs. So I'd like to dive in and ask you a couple questions about that. Maybe we can start with you telling me a little bit about the current iteration of CoCommercial and maybe tell people what CoCommercial is.
Totally. Well, first of all, I love the term that you use, community-led products and programs. That is exactly what we do. So CoCommercial, the way we talk about it is a support and social network for small business owners in the digital space. So if you are a small business owner and if you are using digital tools, anything from a website to a Facebook page to email marketing to anything that you do online, it's a great place to kind of hang out, ask questions, talk about the challenges that you're facing, talk about the opportunities that might be in front of you, and get feedback and support and help and just shared experience from hundreds of other people who have been there, done that, and are still doing it every day. And CoCommercial is sort of the evolution of a decade's worth of work now in the small business space in the online world. So I got started blogging for craftspeople and artists and illustrators and makers of all sorts, and ventured into web design and ventured into business coaching from there. And I'll spare you the whole story, but it's been kind of a long and winding road. But at every single turn, what I saw were people being held back by their lack of access to the knowledge and experience and ideas and perspectives and different approaches and diverse perspectives of all the other small business owners that were out there working towards similar goals, working through similar challenges. And I could see that, times where I got ahead or where you got ahead or where the other people that I was watching actually got ahead happened more because they had a great conversation or because they saw behind the scenes of what someone else was doing and because they took the right online course for that moment, or less because they got on the FOMO wagon with some really expensive online program that was coming out. And so I started to really ask myself, what could I do to facilitate that kind of learning, that peer-to-peer support, that access to that kind of behind the scenes information, those sort of in the moment ahas and how-tos and whys and what did you do when kind of questions. And so that's what CoCommercial really is all about. It's a platform for making those kind of interactions happen. And time again, we've seen that those interactions are the ones that lead to huge breakthroughs for people. And it can be just, one sentence, one question at a time, but it can be the difference between staying stuck and feeling like ahead.
Yeah, one person can save you kind of months and years of going down the wrong rabbit hole, right?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So obviously, like you said, it's been sort of 10 years in the making to get to this point. And so there's been a huge evolution over the years. And I'm not even sure if Kickstart Labs was sort of one of the first introductions, or at least it was, for me, it was one of your first sort of community products of sorts, right? Where there was sort of course components, and then there was also online community. And you've just always been experimenting with different formats. And I've really valued that, like your willingness to see what is working and see what's not working and pivot and adjust accordingly. So tell me a little bit about the beginning. Like, what was your first digital product where you started to see, oh, wait, there's room for me to make a living off of this, and there's some potential here?
Oh my God, my first digital product, which to the best of my knowledge was the first digital product in the kind of craft and maker field. I don't know anyone else who was doing something like this at the time. I was plugged into the very beginnings of the digital product world, sort of in the pro blogger sphere and the copy blogger sphere. And so I could see these other people who were doing these other really cool things. And I was like, no one else is doing this in my world. I'm going to give this a try. Or, you know, I I could write things. Writing things sounds fun. So anyhow, my very first digital product was an ebook, like the old school kind of ebook, a fancy PDF, called 52 Weeks of Blogging Your Passion.
I totally bought that. I totally bought that ebook. Yep.
So that book was simply sort of an introduction to blogging, and I haven't looked at it in years, and I would probably be so embarrassed to look at it right now.
It was cutting edge.
But yeah, so it was sort of like an introduction to blogging, sort of mindset stuff around how to think about talking about what you do, what you make. And then it was literally just 52 ideas for blog posts to get you through an entire year of weekly blogging. And that's all it was. I don't remember how many pages it was, but it was not very many pages. I don't actually remember right now what I charged for it, but I think it was like $15. So it was a low cost ebook at the time. That might sound expensive now, but then, ebooks were routinely selling for $27, $47, and $97. So this was pretty low cost. And I wrote it sitting in a Panera Bread over a course of, maybe 2 weeks. It wasn't a lot of work, but I wrote it. I put it out over Christmas. Oh my God, I would never do that now. But I made sales. And so from the moment that I realized I could make something that was valuable to people, that solved a problem for people, and that I could just literally make money in my sleep at that point, it was a huge aha moment. To that point, I had been making money kind of setting up some basic websites for people and selling advertising. Selling advertising at the time was actually my primary revenue stream. And so this world of digital products and, like I said, solving people's problems kind of came screaming into focus for me. And it was just like, oh, this is it. I can do this.
So can I ask if you're willing to share, you said it sold and, did you already have a bit of a following and an audience at the time when you put it out there? Like you must have been hearing from people that this was a need. So how did that first launch do? How much revenue did you bring in that you were like, yes, this is worth pursuing and doing more of this?
Yeah. So this is literally the last week of 2009. And so it was legitimately before we were talking about having launches. I feel so old sometimes.
Yeah.
So I did not launch it. I literally finished it, put it on my website and waited for people to buy it. So, I maybe made like $100 that first week. But then I kept making $100 and then another $100 and then another $100. And then I'd make a whole many more $100. And so it kind of had that slow roll to it. I would tell you to the cent if I knew how much money I made on it, but I have no idea. It's probably lost in an eJunkie account somewhere. Yeah. Again, dating myself. But yes.
Did you have a list at that point?
That's a good question. I believe I had started an email list in September of that year. So just to give you kind of the overview of that year, I launched my business in January of 2009. And by launching my business, I mean, I put a website out there and I told some people on Facebook that it existed. And so I started kind of a relationship building. It was very, very one-to-one at the beginning. And I built a small readership for a very, very niche blog over a course of a few months. That led to some additional opportunities. But most importantly, all of that relationship building actually led to me being able to purchase a blog that someone else had started and grown to, at the time, a fairly large following. So when I purchased that blog in July of 2009, I had a few thousand RSS subscribers. I had people that were very willing to sign up for email updates. I had an existing advertising base, all of that good stuff. And so what I was really purchasing was a platform. And so, and I think that's something we don't talk about a lot, the opportunity to actually into something like this. They're out there. It's few and far between, but they are out there, and it's a totally legitimate option. Anyhow, bought into this platform. And then I took it from there and expanded it really, really quickly. And so, yeah, I think September of that year is when I had actually started the mailing list. So I was able to send some sort of email over Christmas about the first product. But primarily the way I sold that very first product was actually just going around and guest posting at other people's blogs. And so I would blog about blogging specifically, again, for kind of creative entrepreneurs and makers. And every time I would post, I would see sales. I'm like, well, I can keep doing this till the cows come home, right? So that was sort of the sales process behind that very first product.
Amazing, exciting. It's always just cool to hear those origin stories of how the light bulb went off and kind of what the evolution was. So what was next? I mean, where did Kickstart Labs come after that? Because I'm sure I purchased that ebook at the time, and I think Kickstart Labs was one of the very first investments I made in my business. And I think at the time it was $250, and it was, oh my gosh, am I really paying $250 to invest in my business? And I remember at the time, it seemed like a lot of money. I was freelancing at the time. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but it's been so fascinating to watch the evolution of the format of that too. So tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah. So Kickstart Labs is a little bit further down the evolution of my kind of digital product suite, I guess you could call it. What happened is that I started building lots of digital products. Basically, I got bit by the digital product bug after that first ebook. Yeah. I wrote another ebook. I put together a very rudimentary online course. I put together another course called Website Kickstart, which is what sort of kicked off the Kickstart brand. And that Website Kickstart class was really what took my earning from like good to, oh my God, I had no idea I was capable of making this much money. It was, in hindsight, it wasn't that much money, but at the time it was crazy. I can remember my mother-in-law at the time, my former mother-in-law, saying, what are you doing? How is this happening? Like, I don't know. I did know, but yeah, I taught people how to build their own website on WordPress. Again, very few things like it existed at the time. I was very, very early. And that made good money. And what I could see in taking people through that course was all the other opportunities there were to teach them how to do things in their business. And so I kept kind of creating these little products. And I realized that every time I created a little product, I had to go through a sales campaign and through a sales cycle. And I had to not only build the product, but I had to build the marketing and the sales page and yada, yada, yada. All the things we know go into it. But I was literally doing this like every 6 weeks. Like, that's a problem because it was taking me away from other important things. And I realized that I probably wasn't actually making as many sales as I could have because I was just churning this stuff out.
Focusing on new stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I had lots of repeat business, but didn't have, but I wasn't growing my platform because I was so focused on kind of maintaining that repeat business, which is a common mistake I see for people. Anyhow, that's when I had the idea to pull all of those resources together and call it Kickstart Labs. And so Kickstart Labs was an effort to say, I like to make stuff. You like to buy the stuff that I make because it helps you answer X, Y, or Z question. Why don't you pay me a certain amount of money that's more than I'm used to making in one transaction now? And I will give you access to everything I make over the course of a year. And so that very first launch of that, I think we were calling them launches by that point, the very first launch of that brought in a group of people who were like, yes, that's what I want. I want all of your stuff. That sounds awesome. And in my mind, it was very much centered around the stuff. They want what I'm making. Sooner than later, of course, though, people wanted to talk to each other. They wanted to talk to the other people who liked my stuff and who were doing the same things and were facing the same challenges and were using similar solutions because they had purchased my stuff. And so demand grew for some sort of forum or group where they could share information and ideas. And so then we bundled that in with that product as well. And I started to see, second, this is actually the valuable thing. It's not my products. It's not my answers, although that's obviously that stuff is valuable. It's actually this community component. And so over time, and we're talking about a course of 5 or more years, over time, the resource library started to fade back into the shadows, and the community started to really kind of come to the surface as the main thing that people were buying, the main thing that we were selling and providing value for. Operationally, then, we adjusted internally so that it was less about me making stuff and maybe more about me showing up, or more about us as a team connecting people together actively, or hosting events, or whatever it might be, to the point then where we get today with what we have with CoCommercial, where our operational focus is 150% on making that community, making that access, that platform as valuable for people as humanly possible, so they can get the answers that they need to the questions that they have about their business. Does that help?
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm curious about how even the marketing may or may not have had to shift from something that is more buy this thing, get this information, versus no, trust me, the learning happens between the people. And like, I'm sure you've got opinions about this. So I'd love to hear about the challenges or opportunities of that marketing.
Yeah, I have lots of opinions and all challenges when it comes to this. So what I have found is that it is infinitely easier to sell people a particular outcome based on a particular solution that you have created. That is always going to be easier. It is far harder to say, exactly as you said, trust me. If you ask a question, you're going to get a great answer. And part of the problem is that people don't trust themselves. Like, I just spent a few hours putting together a massive post on how to ask for better feedback for your business, because I have found over and over and over again, people don't actually know how to ask questions about their business.
What to
and
ask.
And they know it too, right? That's why the opportunity of creating online courses and workshops and webinars is so huge, because people are like, yes, I can just sit back and someone's going to tell me what I need to know. And we know it doesn't actually work that way, right? That's not kind of passively learning is not how we create breakthroughs in our business. It is not how we make decisions. It is not how we create implementation plans. We have to actively participate in learning to be able to then make good decisions, find those breakthroughs, and implement effectively. But asking people to actively participate in their learning is really unsexy and hard. And I don't have answers for, and I don't have a solution for how to market that effectively. We've tried all sorts of things. In the end, I think what has worked best for us so far is calling out sort of that cycle of, I don't have a name for this. I should have a name for the cycle, but I don't. But it's that cycle of either asking, now what? You know, when you get to a point in your business where things are feeling hard, or things, you know, you've gotten to the end of your plan and you don't know what's next, or something in the market changes and you don't know how to respond to that. And we all do it. And we do it whether you're a coffee shop owner, or you're an online business owner, or whether you're Howard Schultz at Starbucks. We're all asking, now what, on a regular basis in our businesses. The other kind of cycle, or piece of that cycle, is that we make plans for our businesses. We set goals for our businesses. This is a constant thing that we are always doing. And we always run into some sort of obstacle or snag in our plan, or question about how to move forward next. And so by kind of calling out that cycle, and by just talking about the familiarity of knowing that you're going to make a plan and run into something hard, or that you're going to finish the plan and ask yourself, well, now what do I do? By calling out that familiarity and helping people kind of remember that feeling of being stuck or not knowing what to do next, and saying, what we provide is a solution for that. Because what you need most when you are at that point, when you're facing that obstacle, when you're facing that snag in your plan, when that question of now what comes up over and over again, what you need most is a community of people, or a group of people, a person that you could go to and say, hey, can you help? What's your experience with this? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? What mistakes do you think I should try to avoid? And so kind of calling that out, telling that story, that's been what's most effective for us. But that's a completely different marketing strategy than what you would use to sell a product with a specific outcome. I literally rack my brain on at least a weekly basis for like, what is the webinar that I could use to teach that to people, right? Because I know I can sell well from a webinar. I know people get excited when I'm excited about what I'm doing, but there's literally no webinar I can teach that,
It's like, get the feel for my community.
Exactly. It doesn't work. So everything that I've learned how to do marketing wise to this point has been almost proven irrelevant to what I'm trying to do now. And I try as much as I can, but I'm really still feeling things out. And for me, I look to the SaaS world for how they market their companies, how you market your company, right?
Or don't.
Because that to me is the closest correlation, where there's a company that's solving the same problem over and over and over again. How do I tell a similar story for the problem I'm solving over and over and over again? And it's tricky, and I don't know what the answer is, but that seems to be the story that people really get. And when they trust themselves enough to say, yes, I am going to try and solve this problem, or yes, I am going to experience this, they love it. But I'll be honest, that jump is still a difficult one for people to make. And I don't have an answer of how to make it easier yet.
Interesting. No, that's really interesting. I was just curious about that because I know it, like you said, it's a different promise. It's a different thing. So I imagine a good chunk of the growth comes from other members telling other people, like, this is the place that you got to be a part of. And so probably that word of mouth or sort of ambassador type relationship, is that something that you've, highlighted or spotlighted people in the community and sort of reward people for that word of mouth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say our growth is kind of split 50-50 between let's go with 50-50 for now. I might add a third thing in here, but our growth is is half kind of member driven, network driven growth, where people say, I'm part of this thing. Trust me, you are going to belong here. You're going to love it. They're going to help you solve whatever problems that you're working with right now. We've experimented with rewarding people who do refer people to us. That wasn't super effective. We find people just share because they love it. And if they're not going to share, if they are going to share, they are going to share. Again, we haven't figured out a perfect system yet for fueling that growth. I think one thing we need to do more of is just talk about it. Please share us with your friends, right?
Yeah, like reminding people that you benefit from them telling their friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, part of the problem that we experience there is that our members are largely members because they are isolated from other small business owners. They haven't found a place with other small business owners before. They're not connected to groups of entrepreneurs. So they might have a person here or a person there that they refer and actively do, but we don't see people bringing in, 10 of their friends at a time, which is what I would really prefer. So that's an interesting kind of piece, but it's a huge piece of our membership growth. The other piece of our membership growth is storytelling. And that happens in two different ways. One, it happens with articles that I write. The way I've been marketing things for forever, through blogging and through emails. But those blog posts and emails are very different than they used to be. Again, looking to the SaaS environment as sort of a beacon of what I'm supposed to be doing here. I actually blog a lot more about my company now than I used to. It used to be all about you, right? You as the business owner, you. Now I blog about we an awful lot. And I do so, of course, in service of the person reading it. And I am absolutely trying to teach a lesson or elucidate some point or tell a story. But it is at least for me, it's a much more we generated kind of topic than the you topics that I might have blogged about in the past. My goal is to not be seen as an expert. My goal is to be seen, in this case, as sort of an ambassador for what we're trying to accomplish at CoCommercial. And so I had to be super duper careful to not put myself in that expert category with blogging, which is exactly where I used to be. The other way we do that is with our podcast, and our podcast is storytelling in a different way in that my goal with our podcast is called What Works, is to talk to small business owners about what's working for them. And in having those conversations where we deep dive, we get real specific, we talk about a single thing, like what's working for you with social media, or what's working for you with the way you developed this particular product. My goal is to tell a story about the kinds of conversations that we actually have inside of CoCommercial. Because people can't see those conversations unless they join, I wanted to give some sort of public face to what we're trying to accomplish. And so the podcast is that. And so you won't find me necessarily telling a story of CoCommercial there, although we run ads on our own podcast, of course. But it is more of that show, don't tell kind of storytelling. Yeah. And that's been really effective for us.
So I was going to ask you, is the podcast one of the primary ways that people hear about CoCommercial, and kind of what are some of those other events, retreats, whatever it is that kind of feed into CoCommercial?
Yeah, the podcast has actually been huge, and surprisingly so. So kind of a little bit of backstory there for people who don't know. I ran the podcast for over 2 years with Creative Live, which is an online learning platform for creative entrepreneurs that I've had a relationship with for the last 5 years as an educator. And we co-produced it, and the branding was off. It was never theirs, and it wasn't fully mine. And for as much as people really liked it and we have great listenership, it just never really worked for either of us. And so I approached them at the beginning of the year and said, I'd like to take this over completely. We will do all the editing. We will take it over. You don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with it the way it is now. So let me just have it. And they did. And they were wonderful about it. And so we took it over and we completely rebranded it. It's exactly the same as it was before. It just has a different name. But because it has a different name and because it has a slightly different feel, people get it now in a way that they did not get it before. So even to me, we're doing basically the exact same thing, but the results of it have been dramatically different. So yes, so the podcast is absolutely a lead generation and new member source for us. Medium blog is another lead generation and new member source for us. I can bury a link to CoCommercial in an article, and if that article is the right topic, the right story, we will get new members from it. And it surprises me every time it happens, but I love it. And then, as you said, member referrals are our other mainstream. Those are the three things, the three ways people find out about us. There really is no other way. We don't run ads at this point. It might be on a podcast and people find out about us there. But those are our three core channels for growth.
Very cool. One thing I was curious about, kind of going back to how you said people sort of think they want a course, right? It's sort of like, have you ever used informational products then kind of as a lead-in, being like, give them what they want, or sell them what they want, give them what they need? Like, has that ever been part of the strategy?
Yes, it absolutely was part of the strategy before we were CoCommercial. That is how we sold Kickstart Labs. We did it independently and we did it in partnership with Creative Live. So I would do a Creative Live class, and as a bonus, you would get a month free in Kickstart Labs. And we got lots of new members that way. We could still be getting lots of new members that way if we still offered a 30-day free trial, but we don't. So
can I hear more about that change too?
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. I will say more on that in just a minute. Sorry. It's like, yes, I want to answer that question. And also, what was the previous question?
Sorry. Yeah,
no,
courses
okay.
as a lead-in.
Yeah. So now every time I'm in a new member slump, or every time I'm just getting very frustrated with trying to tell this story in a different way, I think about creating an online course. And I do pull myself back.
Resist the urge.
Because it is antithetical to our value proposition. for exactly the reason that I was just talking about, where I don't want to be an expert. I don't want to be the teacher anymore. It's not that I don't like teaching. I love teaching. It's not that I don't think I have things to teach. I've got plenty to teach. But it's not the value proposition for that product. It's not the company that I want to build. And it is not the method in which to fulfill our vision. And so I try to be as clear and hold the line on that as much as humanly possible. What we have developed is, or what we have done is kind of asked ourselves, what would an online course look like that does hold the line on the value proposition that we have, the vision that we have, the way that we want to show up in the community that we want to build. And so earlier this year, we developed a program that we call the What Works Business Immersion. And it could look like an online course at first glance, but it is completely not, because it literally has no curriculum. There is nothing that I teach in the program. I set some things up, I facilitate some things, but the meat of the program and the thing that people get most excited about once they're in it is small group discussions. And so I remove myself as an expert. I remove myself as a teacher. I even remove myself largely as a facilitator. And we equip people with questions, with prompts, with ideas. And then we say, okay, go talk about this with everybody else. And we break people into groups of 3 or 4. They powwow on these different ideas. They talk about their experiences. They talk about where they're challenged. They talk about what their opportunities might be. And then we kind of all come together as a big group. We debrief for a little bit and we do it again. And we do that over a course of 8 weeks, which builds relationships. It helps people feel more safe and more like they belong in our community. And it gives them that kind of real-time interaction that, as Carlos Saba from Happy Startup School would say, that engineered spontaneity, that is where big breakthroughs happen in business. So we are experimenting with that kind of method for getting people into our community, but without making it an information product. I would not call that program in any way an information product. There's no information in it. It is an experience. Yeah, it's an experience. It's an interactive deep dive. It's inquiry-based learning, but there's no information. So that's how we've kind of bridged that gap. And I'm really excited about it. I absolutely, it's been so fun to watch people's faces just, they light up after they come back from these small group discussions. People are being more active. People who have lurkers for years are coming out of the woodwork and comment questions. And so that's been hugely successful for us. And it's created sort of, it didn't really create a revenue stream, but it gave us a new way to sort of goose a revenue stream that had been dormant. And that's been awesome.
And is that something that people who are already in the community can purchase and get access to, or people outside of the community as well? Is it kind of an open product?
It's our sort of our entree into the premium level of CoCommercial. So we have a basic level that is $199.99 per year right now. That's the pricing right now. And then we have a premium tier, which is $999 per year. So $1,000 per year. And that premium tier comes with everything the lower tier comes with, of course. Comes with a lot more weekly opportunities to just live in person back and forth with people. So we host weekly flash masterminds that are similar to the way the immersion is set up. We host weekly co-working chats. We host some additional events on top of that as well. Plus, extra hands-on support, extra private discussion areas, all that sort of stuff. So it's even more hands-on than the regular group is. And so the regular membership has the option to upgrade into the immersion when we're enrolling for that, and we enroll from the public for that as well.
Gotcha. And so tell me a little bit about that decision. How long did you have the trial available, and when did you make that decision that, this isn't working?
Yeah, we've had some sort of trial for Kickstart Labs / CoCommercial for it was probably 4 years, and in varying lengths. Sometimes it was 7 days, sometimes it was 10 days. A lot of times it was 30 days. 30 days seems to be some sort of sweet spot for us. And we had monthly pricing that went along with that. Right. So if you got 10 days free, then at the 10th day, you were charged for the next month, et cetera. Same thing with the 30-day trial. What we found is that for as much as people like free stuff, a free trial is actually, again, really hard to sell. So people will put it off because if you just have open enrollment on a free trial, people wait until they're going to have the time to take advantage of it. Well, all small business owners know we never have the time to do the things that we say we're going to do when we have the time, because we don't ever have the time. So it was like pulling teeth to get people to take advantage of that free trial, when Kickstart Labs was just sort of like a side product that we offered. That didn't matter. I didn't care. We'd enroll new people every so often, a few times a month, and I'd be like, hurrah, this is great. But when CoCommercial became our core offer, our only offer, this was a huge problem. Yeah. So I started asking myself, what is it about the free trial that is creating this kind of friction? There's lots of reasons that I could go into that I think that friction was there. But bottom line, it wasn't how people were used to purchasing support for their business. They were used to plopping a credit card, grabbing their credit card and plopping down $2,000 for an online course, right? That's how they were used to paying for it. And with that $2,000 investment, they would get a 30-day free or a 30-day money back guarantee or a 60-day money back guarantee that have some sort of refund policy along with it, right? That's how people were used to buying. So I thought, how can I take advantage of how people are used to buying and make this easier for people, reduce the friction around it? So what we did is got rid of the 30-day free trial, and we switched to annual pricing instead of monthly pricing. And as I just said, our annual pricing is still not $2,000, although we probably could charge that. It's much, much less than that, but we can say, all right, for $200, we are going to be here and support you for the next year. Whenever you run into a challenge, whenever you run into an obstacle, you come to us. In addition to that, we're going to create events. We're going to create opportunities for you to meet other folks, for you to learn things you didn't know you needed to learn. We are going to be your one-stop shop, and it's $200 for the whole year. That's it. If you don't like it, if you don't think our people are as smart as we think they are, if you don't think they're as generous as we think they are, we'll give you 30 days to check it out. At the 30-day mark, you can ask for your money back and we'll give you your money back. So that has been actually an easier sell than the free trial was. I think, it was a huge gamble at the time. And I'm still a little shocked that it worked, but it has definitely worked. That's not to say, like, even right now, I haven't completely made a decision, but I think next week, I'm going to put up a little free trial, like a 14-day free trial, 3 days, give people the opportunity to come in and check it out, still on that annual pricing. And we'll see how that goes. It's not that I'm anti-free trial. It's not that I'm all about 30-day money back guarantees. It's just, I was trying to match up, something that is really different, an offer, a value proposition that's really different than what people are used to buying, and at least create some sort of sense of familiarity with it. And in this case, the way we priced it and the way we sold it was the way to do it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And being in the SaaS world too, I can totally relate to just when someone's being charged every month for something, it's another like, oh, did I take advantage of this thing this month? Is this a thing that I can drop from my credit card? So I can totally understand how the annual pricing is, even if people are busy for months at a time and then they dive in a different season, like they can still feel like they got their values worth. So
yeah, totally. And the way we look at it, if you come in and you ask a question that you're dealing with right now, or you talk about a challenge that you're dealing with right now, you're going to get that $200 worth of value right away. And so that makes people feel really good about it. And then they can kind of slowly over time find their place in the community. You know, we know it's intimidating to join a new group of people. You're going to feel like there's certain people that, you know, get all the attention, or there's certain people that have all the answers. And, you know, again, I can say that it's not like that, but until you are in there and you experience, just don't know. So it gives people a little bit more time. They can get the value right away, and then they can take that time where they are feeling more confident about that buying decision to really get a feel for the network, the community itself.
Well, I love that you brought that up, because I was curious. I'm sure that those first 30 days are kind of your chance to be like, look how valuable this community is. And so do you do anything specific in the onboarding, or just making sure that when someone does come in, that they really get a sense of that value? What does that onboarding look like? Or is there enough value in there that they're like, cool, I'm good to go?
Yeah. So we're actually in the midst of making some changes like that right now, just because Mighty Networks, who's our kind of our platform host, has just made some significant upgrades. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But the main thing that we do is one of our core capabilities, one of the things that we put the most investment into, is being a human-powered network. We're not about algorithms. We're not about kind of passive learning. We're about getting in there and helping you get what you need. So I have 2 employees who kind of spearhead making sure that literally every single person that enters our network hears from a real person. So they sign up, and within 24 hours, they are greeted by either our community advocate, Shannon, or a member experience specialist, Kristen. And they give them sort of the download on, here's what you need to know about this. Here's what you need to know about. You can come to this event that's happening later this week. We'd love to meet you, to learn more about you. Please post an introduction. Let me know if you need any help of, forming your first post, making your first question, whatever you need, I'm here for you. And so we have this really kind of human touch onboarding. We have automated onboarding too. There's emails that go out, and there's videos people see, and there's a welcome area in the platform. But for my money, it's that human onboarding that makes the difference. And we really think that if someone goes out of their way to say, hey, welcome, so glad you're here, that in and of itself is so different than what they're getting with other products, that it will at least make them take a second look, if, even if that first look is a little overwhelming. So that's what we're doing. The changes that I alluded to are that Mighty Networks just rolled out a course feature internally. And like I said, we don't do courses. We don't do passive learning. We don't do resource libraries. But what we do is try to organize content in a way that makes sense for people, because any kind of forum, any kind of conversation space can be super overwhelming. I mean, think about your Facebook feed. We're like your Facebook feed, but for business. So that's overwhelming. That's crazy. Yeah. And we know it's hard to find what you're looking for. So one of the other things that we're doing is kind of compiling all of our member onboarding, compiling stories, compiling great posts, compiling as much sort of here's what you need to know at the beginning information as possible, and actually kind of listing that as a resource that people can walk through step by step. So it might not be something that everybody wants to go through the whole thing. It might be something that people kind of pick and choose from. But again, it kind of lays things out so that no one feels lost. That's what we try and avoid most. It breaks my heart when new members feel lost, or they feel like they can't ask a question, or they feel like they don't know who to talk to. We just, as a team, we just want to hug people and be like, no, it's okay. Here, look, can we help? So we try and do that in as many different ways as possible. But the most important, like I said, is that human touch, that human powered piece.
Yeah. Awesome. One question I have is about the sort of format of the engagement or the content, because it does feel like you are consistently always putting out, whether it's a virtual workshop, whether you're interviewing someone. And so I'm curious, kind of what are those different pieces, and how much of your time is sort of spent not necessarily creating content, but creating events or creating things within and for the community versus, say, iterating on what's next, or where are we heading? What do I need to create next? What's happening? How do you balance kind of the now supporting the existing community versus iterating and evolving.
Yeah. So again, having a team is key. I could not do it all by myself, and empowering my team members to be leaders in the community, empowering our members to be leaders in the community has been key. So I'm really only taking generally 2 to 3 hours out of my week to actively be creating content, or we think of it less as content and more like or creating opportunities for people to connect on a certain topic. It's content, but for my brain, I need to put it in that way so I don't go back to making courses and information products. So it's really, like I said, it's only a few hours out of the week where I'm doing that. And then another few hours out of the week, my team is doing that. So I am doing things like interviews or Q&A sessions or, recording the podcast. And that's a few hours out of the week, but my team is leading, new member orientation sessions. They're leading Flash masterminds. They're leading our co-working chats. They're leading roundtable discussions. They're doing interviews. And that has been a huge, just mind-blowing experience for me to see people who work for me creating value. Me, absolutely amazing. But one of the things I think that helps us spend, how do I want to say this? One of the things that we do that helps us not necessarily spend less time, but keeps us more in the moment, both in terms of what we need to do now to make the product work, and also how we're making the product work into the future, is by thinking about whatever kind of content we're creating, whether it's an event or a discussion or a mastermind or whatever, as an opportunity to create member contribution. So instead of team contribution, instead of a top-down approach, we actually look at our events, our interviews, our discussions as opportunities to create up content, right? So membership-driven content. So what that means is that, yes, we're the ones leading a roundtable discussion, but through that roundtable discussion, our real goal isn't to answer people's questions there. Our real goal is to get them to go back to the community and ask a different question, or talk about an insight that they had, or share a story from something that's worked for them in a similar light and reference that event, or not reference that event, but it's to create that cycle of content so that hopefully for every hour that we spend in Crowdcast or on Zoom or in a chat, for every hour we spend there, we're creating member-driven, or we're inspiring member-driven content of, 5 posts, 10 posts, 15 posts. And that creates that forward momentum then that makes what we do more sustainable. And the more we can do that, the better we can do that, the more sustainable long-term it will be.
Yeah. And I'm sure the beauty of having a sort of member-led community is there's a freaking gold mine of customer research in there constantly, right? Like you're probably learning so much about, we're noticing that people are really struggling with this and we thought it was this. And it probably provides you with a constant stream of really interesting research, and even like those nuggets that then go on your sales page, right?
Yeah, totally. And, we have editorial meetings to I think we thought when we were coming up with the need for editorial meetings that we were going to have to sit there and rack our brains about, all right, what are we going to make this month? How are we going to do this differently? And instead it's okay, guys, rein it in. We have content figured out through the end of the year right now. It's never ending. The opportunities that we see to meet people's needs, to provide opportunities to connect, to discuss hot topics. So this month, June is, the not so sexy side of business. We're going to talk about numbers. We're going to talk legal stuff. July and August, we're going to talk about fitness, mental fitness, business fitness, personal fitness, physical fitness, all of that good stuff so that you're, working at your peak performance. September, we're going to talk about content marketing and on and on. And we've got an idea of what all those events are going to look like, how that's going to change the conversation inside of the community, and why that's going to be valuable for people. And you're right. It's because we see the conversations happen and we say, well, I can make content for that. I can make a theme for that. We can make a series of events for that. And it becomes so easy. So it's very much a dance with the membership Our goal, like I said, is to give them opportunities to contribute themselves. And that means that our job is really to build that platform for them, build the infrastructure that they need to be able to do that. So that's what we really look at our jobs as opposed to being coaches or opposed to being consultants. Our job is building that infrastructure. It just happens to not be, in this case, a coding infrastructure. It's sort of it's a community infrastructure, right? It's a human infrastructure.
Yeah, and it's, we've talked a little bit about sort of, courses and communities and that sort of thing. And, one thing I've noticed that really stops people is like they might see someone like yourself, or they might see those people that kind of have these big communities. And when they're just starting to build their courses or digital communities, they're so afraid to get in the trenches and just get out there with people, because they're like, oh, well, I'm not there yet. I'm never gonna look like that. And so I think it kind of prevents people from testing the waters, doing a learning launch, getting their feet wet, just putting that content out there early. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Like when you're just starting, maybe just growing your business, and you want to put products out there, you want to put a course out there, maybe you want to start a community, but you're kind of a small potato. Is everyone destined to have a community of sorts, or do you think some people are better at facilitating online communities and maybe that model isn't for everyone?
Oh, it's not for everyone. I'm not sure that it's for me. No, I am sure that it's for me. But it's definitely not for everybody. What I have now in terms of the company that I have, the product that we've created, the opportunity that we can provide for small business owners is the result of 10 years of work. Had I not put that 10 years in, I would not have what we have right now. And it may take another 10 years of work to get it to where I think it should be now. Right? Like I would love for us to say we serve 10,000 small business owners, but we're not there yet. And I can say, I think that when we serve 10,000 business owners, we'll be a better community, but we're not there yet. And that creates a lot of challenges, and it is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of figuring things out, and it's a lot of saying, I don't know. When I think about people who are starting now, or who even started 5 years ago, I come back to that the Paul Graham idea of do things that don't scale. Every time I have done things that don't scale, every time I have dialed back that need for scale, that need to broadcast, that need to reach the masses with something, I do a lot better. I set myself up for success, right? So in the very, very beginning, it was creating a super niche blog and telling select people on Facebook, on Etsy, in my local community that it was available, and having an ongoing dialogue with those people, not with a list, not on my blog, but with those people. And I think that's what we don't do enough of today. And every time I think about what do I need to be doing, or what could I be doing better to grow my community now, it's having those kind of dialogues again. It's talking to influencers and going back and forth like this. It's talking to our members and going back and forth. It's showing up, being there in a way that doesn't scale, but recognizing that my job isn't to scale it right now. My job is to build that infrastructure so that it is prepared for scale when that tipping point happens. And I believe that if we keep doing things well, if we keep that dialogue open, if we keep doing things that don't scale as we build this infrastructure, we absolutely will hit that tipping point.
Interesting. And I'm curious too, if you have, obviously your goal is sort of hit those 10,000 members, but do you think with a community like yours, is there a critical mass? Is there a point where it can almost tip where there's too many voices or too much noise? And how do you mitigate that when you've got volume to make sure that voices are heard and it's still easy to navigate and find that information? Is that something that you've thought about as you think about what 10,000 really would look like for your time or your team or the community members? Yeah,
absolutely. It's something that we think a lot about. And we do ask ourselves. So I think there's a difference between saying, do things that don't scale and doing things that you couldn't, that make it impossible to scale, right? What you do will change. And it's not that you do it's not that you shouldn't do things that can't scale. But you shouldn't go down any road that is going to end in a roadblock if you scale. I think. How can I say what I'm trying to say? Because it's not being clear. I guess there are certain
people look different, right? It's not going to make it look the way it does now at that number.
Right. And I try not to take things off the table that wouldn't make it easier for us to grow in the future. So for instance, even just at a really personal level, I can't answer everyone's questions right now. I couldn't 5 years ago. I can't now. I won't a year from now or 5 years from now. I know that. I used to try to answer everyone's questions. This is access to a business coach for not business coaching prices, right? That was the old value proposition. That was the old way of thinking about the community. And it didn't work from an operational perspective, right? Now, I know that even though I might be in there and I'm talking to people and I am answering questions and I love answering questions and weighing in with opinions and things like that, that's not the value proposition. That's not what we're offering. And I can't go down that road. Again, it's sort of like the same thing with the information products. I have to take that off the table for myself because that particular piece will limit my ability to grow in the future. So I have to take that off the table. Doesn't mean I don't still go in there and talk to people one-on-one and answer the questions that I can answer, but it's not why people show up. So that's one way that we think about, how does this grow? What does this look like at 10,000 members? At 10,000 members, I literally couldn't answer every question, right? So how then do we self-organize within the community so that everyone's questions can get answered? And so that's going to look like different kinds of groups. It's going to look like different kinds of events. It might mean utilizing Zoom more often and doing more breakout rooms than we're even doing now. But basically, the way I see us growing to 10,000 members, or as we grow to 10,000 members, our goal is to continually find ways to make the community small at some level. So giving you
still feel intimate.
Exactly. So whether that means we have a group that's specifically for makers and a group that's specifically for website designers and a group that's specifically for business consultants, whatever it might be, or it might mean we have a group for metro areas, right? And those metro areas come together and they meet up in person, or states or regions. We don't know exactly what it looks like yet, but that's the strategy for growth, is that every time we start to even hint at point, we need to operationally put something in place that makes the community feel small. Again, gives people the opportunity to find a group where they can be seen, and use people to do that. So maintaining that core capability of being a human-powered network, which means that for every couple of 100 members that we grow, we have to add a part-time member experience specialist, because that's how many people it takes to run or to help organize that many people. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but that's what we're looking at as we grow.
Love it. I always love your willingness to say, I don't know the answer necessarily, and I'm willing to let's figure it out. It's a process, right? So
yes.
That's really amazing. And so what's next for you, whether it is with CoCommercial or just kind of what you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years? What's on the radar for you? What's coming down the pipeline?
Oh man. So what's next for us, I think, is lots of things. It's further developing the What Works business immersion, getting people familiar with the idea of peer support and familiar with the idea of just talking things out instead of sitting back and waiting for the answer to come to you. I see that as an uphill battle, but one I'm really looking forward, or an uphill climb, I should say. I don't want to fight it, but I want to climb it. Awesome. You can come, you're welcome on that climb as well. It's definitely doing more with the podcast. I have so many ideas for the podcast and where I want to take that, and the kinds of people I want to interview, the kinds of stories that I want to tell there. And because the podcast is so successful for us and so effective for us, I think that's a really good place to go. And then I love being in a place where I can legitimately say what's next for us is just continuing to figure out what we already do well, how we can do it better. We have worked so hard on building really strong internal operations in our business that reflect then in the operations of our product and how it's delivered. And we just want to be constantly figuring out how to do it just a little bit better, how to help people feel a little more taken care of, help them feel a little more seen, a little bit more like they belong, and building our community that way. So that's really what we're focused on, even 3 to 5 years out.
It's exciting. It's fun to watch from the outside anyway. I'm like, where's Tara heading? Because I do feel like you're really always paying attention and innovating and kind of looking at what is happening, whether it's in the market space or just trends that you're noticing. You're kind of a few steps ahead and really paying attention to what's happening. So it's always fun to watch what you're up to. So so where can people find you? I know CoCommercial.co is probably the best.
Yes.
The best place.
CoCommercial.co is the best place to go if you want to learn more about CoCommercial, if you want to learn, if you want to get an invitation to CoCommercial, all that good stuff. And then the What Works podcast is the other thing I would definitely check out. It is a small business interview show. I know you've heard them before. You have not heard one like this before. So we literally ask people what is working for them on a particular topic, and we deep dive into whatever that sucker is. And we really try to ask the questions that I know listeners are thinking, ooh, that sounds great, but what about X? I try to ask about X. So,
a little deeper,
that's what the What Works podcast is all about. It's not feel good entrepreneurial stories. It's not expert advice. It's not best practices. It's literally the people who have been there, done that, doing it every day, and what's working for them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me, Tara. I really appreciate it.
You.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.